again, welcome. Today we're continuing learning a little bit about English, but this lesson we are going to be focusing on preparation and techniques for our exams. So in this lesson, we are going to be focusing on how to organize your time before and during the exam, how to remember important information, and then finally, how to develop the skills of answering exam questions, which is important. So, first things first, exams are nerve-wracking. Okay, a lot of us find it difficult to wait for them. We get nervous about maybe 2 weeks before them, an hour before. We get nervous when we go and sit in the exam. So having techniques and ways to deal with these feelings or to deal with the information is really, really useful, and it can help you succeed. So let's have a look first at the terminology that we're going to be using a lot during this lesson. We've got study timetable, we've got memory tools, and we've got reading techniques, we've got skim and scan. So what I want you to do, I want you to take 2 minutes and chat to the person next to you or speak in groups and look at each of these terms and give examples. So if you're looking at a study timetable, first define what is a study timetable and then give examples of study timetables that you've seen or perhaps that you use. All right, so let's begin that process and I'll see you back in 2 minutes. All right, let's look at these definitions. So you spoke about study timetables. What is a study timetable? Well, really quite simply, it's a timetable where you plan out over the days and in each day what subjects you're going to be studying ultimately before you write the exams. Then, memory tools. Memory tools are pretty much the same as techniques you can use, and we're going to look at those techniques you can use to help you remember, okay? And obviously, all of us remember in different ways, but I'm going to show you a few techniques that might work for you. What is skimming? Well, skimming and scanning, they are reading techniques. If, for instance, you have a huge, thick textbook like this, you may have to, instead of reading every single word, you may not have time for that. You might have to just skim through the information. All right, that's a reading technique. Scanning is also reading very quickly through a text, but trying to look specifically for a word or a term. So if I have a book and I am reading about, let's say for instance, verbs, and I've got a lot to read, I might scan the text just very quickly, glancing over it, and locate every time I see the word verb. Okay, so those are skimming and scanning, and they're important techniques to use while you're studying. Now, if we look at organizing our time, time management is something that you're not just going to be using for exams, it's something that you're going to use during varsity and in your life ahead. So it's a nice skill to have. And what I want you to do now is, in your pairs and in the same groups that you are sitting in, I want you to look at these two questions. And I'm going to give you, let's say, 2 minutes to discuss it. First is, do you use a study timetable, or have you ever used a study timetable? And the second point is, if you have, if so, how did you organize it? What tips can you give one another in building this timetable? So I'm going to see you back in 2 minutes. All right, so let's look at this together. You looked at, did you use a study timetable? And you asked yourselves, if you did, how do you organize that? So I'm not there, but I am interested to know how many of you do use a study timetable and how many of you don't. Hopefully by the end of this lesson, I will have convinced you that timetables are good things. Just to give you an example, give you some tips which have always helped me, because obviously I've been at school and I've been at varsity and I've had to organize my time. If you have, you can use a table. Table format's quite nice for a timetable. And what you want to do is you want to obviously first fill in your exams. Okay, so I'm going to be writing English paper 1 here. I'm going to do maths on this day, economics on this day. So that's your first step. Put your exams on your study timetable. Next step, for each exam, count back 14 days and then make a mark. So let's say, for instance, I count back 14 days from the 7th of June. I'm going to go all the way back, and then I will see, okay, now that is the day that I need to start studying. So do that for all your exams, and then you'll get an idea of, okay, I should be beginning here. From that, you can start dividing up your time between the different subjects, between the different topics in the subjects. The day before each of the exams, give that day entirely to studying for the exam that follows. So if you look at this example, I can give you another example of a study timetable. All right, and this one is broken up into a little bit more detail. And here I've filled in all your exams. Let's say, for instance, I know that I'm writing history on this day. I count back 14 days. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I know that I need to begin my studying here. All right, and that's your mark. Obviously, you're going to be studying different subjects at the same time. So you need to manage that. But as I said, the day before history, give that day to revising history only. So a few more tips. Divide your subjects. Give yourself about 45 minutes. Okay, it's very difficult to concentrate longer than 45 minutes. Make sure that you're giving yourself breaks in between. Make sure that where you're studying is conducive. So you might want to study in the library. Don't study lying down on your bed or on a couch. And then finally, ask yourself, what time of day works for me when I'm studying? When am I really fresh? If I wake up early in the morning, do I study better then? How do I study later at night? However, remember, you need to follow your timetable so that you're not cramming the night before and doing an all-nighter. Okay, not a good idea. Let's have a look here. Okay, so we've looked at the different points. Okay, I've given you an idea of study timetables, and what this example shows you is how you can start breaking the topics into smaller pieces. So for instance, you can say to yourself, on Wednesday at this time, I want to focus on adverts. Okay, then I want to look at common language errors. So you start breaking up topic by topic, and it's much more manageable if you do that. So these are all the timetables that we've put together just to show you an example. Okay, as I said, closer to the exam, focus on that one exam. Don't cram the night before, all right, because it's stressful and you're not going to get all the information in. Make a commitment to stick to your timetable, but don't spend too long designing your timetable. So if you've got a month to study, spend a few hours planning your timetable, not a week. All right, because you're losing all that time, all that possible study time. All right, and then if you don't fill in all your time for the study, be realistic. Okay, if you miss a session, don't be too hard on yourself, because obviously things pop up, things happen. Just try and reorganize your study time just a little bit so that you're managing your study for the time ahead. All right, now, while you study, it's very helpful to have some techniques to remember. Okay, how do you remember certain information? And obviously everybody has different ways of remembering. How do you remember in a way that is really easy to retrieve the information when you're sitting in the exam, which is already a stressful situation to be in? Now these memory techniques, we call them mnemonics. Okay, this is how we spell it. Mnemonics. Okay, so mnemonics are memory techniques. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read 15 words. Okay, then I'm going to give you 1 minute, and I want you to see how many of those 15 words you remembered. Okay, so put your pens down, listen clearly, and once we've done this exercise, I'm going to ask you, how did you remember? How much did you remember? How did you remember? And did you use any techniques to remember? So, pens down. I'm going to read the words. I'll read them slowly. Crocodile, glasses, pencil, water, shoes, tree, key, umbrella, bicycle, flower, milk, chocolate, watch, orange, and banana. All right, those are the words. I'm not going to read them another time. You now have 1 minute just to sit and think to yourself and try and remember them in the same order. Okay, so your 1 minute starts now. All right, how did that go? How many words did you remember? Let's re-look at that list. We have crocodile, glasses, pencil, water, shoes, tree, key, umbrella, bicycle, flower, milk, chocolate, watch, orange, and banana. Okay, so 15 words. Work out, did you remember 3, 10, 15? And what we're going to do when we come back, we're going to go for an ad break now. What we're going to do when we come back is I'm going to show you some techniques that might help you to remember lists like this much better. So I'll see you after the ad break. Okay, welcome back from the ad break. As I said, we're going to now take this section to look at using some techniques to help us remember. So there are different phases. Right. The first phase is when you are in class. Okay. There are ways to help your memory. First and foremost, be alert, be fully present. Concentrate on, and focus on what you see and hear. Listen actively. Now, listening actively often involves taking notes. So as you take notes, you might want to do a brainstorm or a mind map, because what that helps you to do is to get the information that's sitting here onto the paper, all right, which is a good memory strategy. If there is anything that you don't understand, all right, it is your teacher's job to explain it to you, all right. Ask questions until you absolutely understand the concepts. Don't worry about irritating anybody. It is your right as a learner, and it is the duty of your teacher to answer questions for you. In class, get involved in discussing ideas, because as soon as you talk about things, you process them, and by processing them, you remember. So that's all the stuff that can happen while you're in the classroom. Now, the next step, all right, is when you're studying. Okay, how can you study in a way that will help you remember? And this is where we look at some more study techniques. Again, read actively. Sitting with a piece of paper or a book in front of you and just reading is not active reading. Active reading is reading with a pen or a highlighter. So you highlight the main points. Don't highlight sentences and huge long paragraphs. No. When you highlight, you are highlighting key points, key ideas. Okay, so that when you go back to that text, you can just pick out the important parts. Sometimes you need to skim. And I said to you that skimming is just looking very quickly through a text. Sometimes you're going to need to scan. And scan, again, is looking quickly through a text, but looking specifically for words. Work in groups or study in groups. That's such a good technique, because there you discuss, you ask questions, you answer questions. You help each other to understand concepts that may be difficult. And then finally, and I found this very useful when I was studying, pretend you're teaching somebody. even if you get a sibling or even if you get a teddy bear and put it in front of you, teach and explain. And you can even start in this lesson, we are going to be looking at this. So through explaining, what you are doing is you're sorting out all the information in your head, presenting it, and that helps you to remember. So let's have a look. Then we get to mnemonics. And I said to you that mnemonics are your memory tools. Let me just get my pen back. Mnemonics are your memory tools, okay, and memory techniques. One quite useful memory technique, and this is maybe if you're more of a visual learner, if you see things and see pictures, is if you have words to remember, is to go on some kind of a mental walk, or to write a story. And what you do here is that you take a place, you take your room, you might take your house, you might take a route on the way to visiting your friends. And what you do in that space, you place the different things that you need to remember. So if you remember the 15 words that I asked you to, well, I read to you and I asked you to remember, let's imagine taking those 15 words and using the technique of taking a mental work or creating a story in a way that will help us to remember. So you're going to do this. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to create the story. But what I'm going to do first is give you an example of how I might process these words into some kind of a story. So I'm going to go back to get the words, to get the lists of words for us. And here we are. So I might say, in my bedroom, on my bed, I have a crocodile. And then I can remember the word crocodile. The crocodile is facing that direction of the glasses. Without my glasses, I'm not going to be able to write, okay, which I need a pencil for doing. When I'm writing, I get thirsty, and in that way, I need to go and get myself some water. So can you see how I've taken those words and I've kind of placed the objects within my room, but I'm also creating a story. So what I want you to do, and I'm going to give you 3 minutes, is to take the rest of the words. I think they will all fit on. There we go. All the way from shoes to banana. And you can do this in your pairs, you can do this in your groups. Take these words and put them either, place them in a room or place them in a place that you are familiar with, or create a story and use that technique to try and remember all those words. And that will help, because if you move into an exam situation, all you do is you recall the story or recall the place, and those words should pop up in your memory. All right, so let's start that. Your 2 minutes begins now. How did that go? Did you find a good story or a good place to place all these words that helped you remember? I hope so. Important. I know that I'm doing this, teaching you this in the context of English. Know that all of these skills, all of these exam skills, you can take to your other subjects. So memory techniques, timetabling, etc., use in all your different subjects. So it'll help you as a student as a whole. So you've remembered your story. Let me show you another. Let me just carry on. I want to show you another memory technique that I find quite useful as well. All right, and it is called acronyms. Now, what an acronym is using the first letter from a group of words to form a new word. Okay, so if you have, again, perhaps you have a list of words you need to remember, take the first letter of each of those words and try and create for yourself another word. So if we look, for instance, and this you have in maths, we've got the word BODMAS. All right, so we've got B for brackets, O for of, D for division, M for multiplication, A for addition, and S for subtraction. So instead of you having to learn all of these terms, right, you condense them into another word. Okay, and that helps with remembering. Another example would be in advertising. We use the principle of advertising where, one, we want to grab the audience's attention, we want to spark their interest, we want to create a desire, and we want to spur them into action. And how do we remember that? Instead of remembering attention, interest, desire, action, we remember ADA. Okay, and there we have an acronym. So acronyms are very, very useful. Okay, let's go to our next slide. Now, you are studying, and we've spoken about where to sit, organizing your timetable, using some memory strategies. But another important aspect is how to actually read the material. All right, we've spoken about skimming, and we've spoken about scanning, and we've spoken about reading actively, but I want to go into a little bit more detail about reading actively. Now, at school, you've got a lot of material to go through, and obviously it gets more and more the closer you get to matric. So mnemonics are useful, but if you have reading strategies, all right, that is also going to help you to retain the information. So what are some of the reading strategies you can use? Highlighting and underlining important words. Now here we have a good example of the amount of words that should be highlighted. All right, as soon as there's a text, and let's say for instance you're using yellow and the whole page is full of yellow, no. All right, you are not selecting the keywords, and that's not going to help you in studying. All right, the whole point of this is if you have a page, it's full of text, you've got your yellow highlighted words spread across the page or sprinkled across the page, you can glance back to that page quickly. Let's say you need to revise the night before. So that's one, highlight, using a pen or using a highlighter. And that again is actively working with the text. The next very useful reading strategy and planning to write strategy is to mind map. And what mind mapping allows you to do is to start to process the information. So if you've got 3 pages of information, what you do is you take out this information and you start chunking it or organizing it or categorizing it in a way that will help you remember. So this is also quite a nice visual way of remembering information. So for instance, if this is my mind map, and what I like to do is I like to use color. Okay, and color and graphics and images, they help me to understand. So let's say, for instance, I need to prepare to write an essay on why I would rather be a South African. Okay, then I would be able to group my information. I'd have my different branches. Okay, and then from each of those branches, okay, I would have subtopics. And I'm not writing long sentences. I'm just using keywords for each of these. And again, what's happening here is that I am processing information, creating a mind map, which helps me remember, and producing something that I can use later to refer back to, which is really, really easy. So you've studied, you're not cramming the night before, you have maybe 4 or 5 mind maps. The night before you want to just review the information, all you do is you look at your mind map and you see, oh, okay, this, done. Next mind map, this, done. Okay, and mind maps are something you can keep, because remember, if you're writing an exam in July, you might still need that content for the final exams in December. So keep it, don't throw away all your notes. So mind mapping is great, and mind mapping is also great for planning. Okay, planning an essay, planning the questions that you will be writing in your exams, planning for a speech. Okay, because what it does is it groups information. So that's a skill that will take you through your life successfully. All right. Another nice way of processing information is to use tables. I like to use tables, particularly if I'm comparing and contrasting. All right, I find that very useful. So you have tables, and again, it's a very visual way to remember information. You can also use tree diagrams, okay, which is sometimes quite similar to a mind map. But here you might be wanting to show a hierarchy, okay, and that depends on the information you're wanting to process. So it might be different in biology or science or English or maths. All of these diagrams you can use across all of your subjects. And then finally, you have a flow diagram. So this you might want to look at cause and effect, or just that process flows. All right, and what this helps you do again is to add keywords and process the information and create something for yourself that you can refer back to, but something that you can also remember. All right, so these are just some of the techniques that we are going to be using. In our next section, and we're going to go to an ad break now, we are going to be looking at what happens when you're actually sitting in the exam room. So I'll see you after 2 minutes. Okay, welcome back from the ad break. As mentioned before, now we're going to be looking at what happens when you're sitting in the exam. Right, you've got the exam paper in front of you. You're usually given 5 to 10 minutes to read the exam. You've prepared, you followed your study timetable, and now you're ready to write. So first things first, make sure you have the equipment. Make sure that you have the equipment. Okay? You cannot walk into an exam room and not have a pen, a pencil. In math, you've got to have your calculator, your ruler, etc., because not only is that going to make you very stressed, but it's also a problem when you have to answer the questions. So be organized. Take to the exam what you need. So, 2 pens, we'll put an S there, 2 pens, 2 sharp pencils in case one of them breaks, an eraser, and colored highlighters. Highlighters are really, really great, particularly when you're reading questions and highlighting the main words in those questions. Okay, so you've got your 10 minutes to read, all right? And remember, you're not allowed to pick up your pen when you are reading. You're only allowed to pick up your pen when the formal exam actually begins. So you've got time, but you can use this time to plan, to strategize. What can you do? And that is what I want to ask you. You've got 5 minutes. You're sitting down. You've got your desk. You've got your equipment. You've got your piece of paper. And the examiner says, okay, you have 5 minutes to read. Right? What is it that you do? What is it that you have done? I want you to turn to the person next to you and tell them. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Describe to them exactly what strategies do you do as you go through the exam paper, okay? Because in that reading time, you need to use that time productively. All right, so I'll see you back in 2 minutes after you've discussed these strategies with your friends. Welcome back. I hope that you guys discussed some good techniques to help one another deal with the 5-minute reading time before you actually start writing. So let me give you some tips. What I like to do, and generally I think most people who have studied and who have looked through some techniques, is that when I'm sitting, the first thing I do, and this is so important, is that I read the instructions. Okay, reading the instructions carefully. Often they're numbered, and what the instructions tell you to do is answer each question carefully. They'll indicate whether you are going to need to make a choice. Answer either A or B. Very important. Often you'll get a learner who doesn't read that, and they'll answer A and B. Okay, so that's 10 minutes that has been wasted. Then open the exam page through and look at all the different sections, because exams are divided into sections. So you might see section 1, section 2, or section A and section B. So you start locating yourself within the exam paper. Go through it and see, okay, these are the places where I'm going to have to make the choices. Okay, be very aware of that. What you can also do is you can plan the order in which you want to answer the questions. You don't have to answer them from question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say, for instance, you have a question that you are very confident with. You can answer that one first, but you must label it very correctly. If there's a question that you absolutely are not sure of, leave that to the last. You can do that, because often answering a question that you are not comfortable with at the beginning will throw you a bit, make you feel less confident for the rest of the exam. So start with something that makes you feel confident. And then, if you have time, and there are multiple choice questions. Go to that section and just read through the multiple choice questions and see, are there any that I could answer? Because what happens when you start doing that is that your brain gets you ready for the information that will come when you actually get to the multiple choice section. So in that 5 or 10 minutes, you've located yourself, you know what you're going to do, you have an idea of the different sections, you've skimmed through the different questions, you've had a look at the mark allocations, which is very important because mark allocations also guide you. And then you can begin to write. But what I want you to do first is I want you to have a look. Let's pretend that you're still in your 5 minutes of reading time. I want you to look in your pairs, and I'm going to give you 3 minutes because I want you to look very carefully. Now, these are the typical instructions that you are going to get. This is for an English paper, but there are going to be similarities across your different subjects. I want you to look at the general instructions, and I want you to tell me, why is it important for you to read these instructions? Okay, and what would you miss if you didn't read the instructions? So I'm going to just take you from instruction 1 all the way down to instruction 10. Okay, so take 3 minutes. In your head, have a verbal image of a mental image of which of the words would you actually highlight if you were to be sitting in the exam and the examiner had said to you, all right, pick up your pens. All right, so I'll see you back in 3 minutes. Let's have a look at how you would handle these instructions. 1 to 10, all right, and read the instructions for each exam, okay, because they may differ across the exams. Here, candidates are required to answer one question from each section, okay? Warning, right, you're going to have to make choices. Use the titles provided. Use them when you answer those questions. Number your questions. That's so important, because if your examiner gets lost, your examiner is going to get irritated and you are not going to necessarily get the best marks you could. Start each section on a new page. Don't write in capital letters, okay, because writing all in caps actually slows you down. You need to write neatly and legibly. Make it a pleasant experience for the examiner to mark your work. Check your spelling, grammar, and your sentence. So if there's time at the end of the exam, go back and check your work, all right? If you're writing longer pieces, for example, like an essay or a shorter text, plan it. And you can just do it very quickly. Sometimes they actually require you to do a quick plan at the back of your workbook. If you are not using any of the text, okay, cross out the rough work so that the examiner doesn't accidentally mark it, okay, and reread your work before you hand it in. Check, check, check. Okay, so those are some good tips to follow for your exams. Then what do we have if we have choices to make? All right, and the biggest clue when you are reading is the word or. Okay, if you see the word or, know that you're going to have to make a choice. Or. Okay, do not do question 1, 2, and 3. Okay, the examiner will mark the first one, and in your actual text, question 2 will be crossed out, question 3 will be crossed out. So you would have wasted all of that time. So again, be very, very careful to make sure that you're not answering a whole lot of questions where in fact you should have made that choice. When you get to the question, okay, you've looked at your instructions, you worked everything out, read them carefully, analyze them, look at the mark allocation, all right? Think to yourself, I'm going to spend 1 minute per mark, all right? So if it's a question for 2 marks, 2 minutes, nothing more. You need to move on. Answer the questions that you are most confident with first, and number your answers really, really clearly. Do everything you can to make the examiner's life pleasant when they're marking. It's a good idea to become familiar with what we call question words. Okay, and these question words are what guide us in how to answer the question. Now these question words, they're going to be across all your subjects. So if you know what the question word is asking for, it will direct you exactly in how to answer your question. So the question words we have, and this is something you can research more. We have comment on, okay, and that's going to ask you to give your opinion. Compare, all right, there you're looking at similarities and differences. Contrast, looking at the differences. Describe, okay, this is when you need to say what happens. Discuss, all right, this is when you give facts and evaluate and give examples. Here you might put evaluate within that same question type. There's explain, okay, you need to give the reason. Identify, you need to pick out something. Illustrate, okay, illustrate is giving examples. Motivate, if they say motivate your answer, then you need to give reasons for your answer. Summarize, give the main points. List, don't write in sentences. Bullet points is fine. Mention, again, is just states. Name, give the names of. State is very similar to mention. I'm going through these quite quickly, but you'll be able to access them. Complete, that would be where you're filling in missing words or spaces. Distinguish always instructs you to look at the difference between things. quote. Quote is when you go back to the text and you use inverted commas. And finally, substantiate. Substantiate is very, very important. If we look now at looking at an actual exam paper, okay, and looking for question words. The question words you can just scan through, okay, and you would see which one. Answer the following questions. I'm just focusing on the question words. Okay, is the statement true or false? Quote one word. Give an antonym. You can see how they direct you. What is very important? So there they're asking for your opinion, but also for you to refer back to the text. Explain. Give a synonym. What do you think? Do you agree? Okay. So just being able to spot all these question words is really going to help you and guide you in answering the questions. Okay. So what I want you to remember is this lesson is for English, but it can be used across all your subjects. Timetables, important. Preparing your work, important. Using memory strategies, important. Sitting in the exam, breathe first, okay? And then use your techniques to plan. And then when you write, follow those question words because they will guide you in how you answer your question. So it was wonderful to be with you today again, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.